again. Yeah, hi guys.
Yep.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Yeah, I can say it again. So we have Ivan who can do short report about implementation of run operation in 8box. So now we have 2 implementations and probably we'll have more soon. And I can share the progress which I did with my best friend on a bulk expert and the run operation. And I started working on a visual client to test run operation and the reference server. Not me, the agents are doing this stuff. Okay,
Well, very cool.
Yeah, that's from my side. Yeah, but what else for agenda?
Yeah, anybody else? John, do you have anything to say?
I've got a bunch of things that are kind of building up that we can certainly have a quick chat about. I'm not sure if we'll get the answers to them, but they're more relating to the actual view definition spec itself. So I'm kind of still back there testing out all the little corners and interoperability challenges there. So
yeah, that sounds good. I don't think you were here last week, but we did mention it. I think that's good to go through that list. From my side, I haven't made any progress on the query resource spec. I didn't get a chance to grab Brian because I want to work with him on thinking through some of the use cases or documenting some of the clinical reasoning use cases that we see. So that's still on my plate. Hopefully I'll have some time this week and be able to give more of an update on that. Anyone else? Steve, here, any agenda?
Yeah, I intended to make much more progress on export than I did. So I had some other competing items, but I hope to have export wrapped up by this time next week, ideally.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, I think that's enough an agenda. Shall we get started, Nikolai, with you?
Yeah, probably let's start with Ivan.
Yep.
And then we can switch to me. Yeah.
All right, welcome, Ivan.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah. Probably not many people know you.
I'm Ivan. I'm working on run operation in iBox, and I will demonstrate you what we supported. First, we supported a view reference parameters that allow to reference to specific view definition. In this example, I create view definition that returns only one column with patient ID. I create patient with ID patient1 and execute a view definition run operation and I receive format in response in JSON format and provide a reference to view definition. And then I didn't create a view definition resource. Okay? And after that, I retrieve my patient ID. Next parameter allow passing a view definition resource in the request body. It's the same view definition that returns patient ID and the same result. Next parameter is a resource. It allows passing a set of resources that the definition will run on. In this example, I provided two patients, patient1 and patient2, and execute the same view definition and retrieve patient IDs. Also, we supported a group parameter. For example, I create a patient with ID group patient1 and create a group resource that contain reference to created patient. And after that, I call run operation and provide a reference to my group and return my group patient1. Next parameter is a patient. I create patient1 and patient2. After that, I provide view definitions that retrieve appointment ID and provide two appointments. First appointment refers to patient1 and second appointment refers to patient2. And I specified patient parameter with reference to patient1, and I retrieve appointment1 because they refers to my patient that I provided. And those support with sign separation. That parameter filter resources that updated before a specific date. In this example, I provided 2 patients with different last updates, and I can filter them by date. And limit parameter, it's our limits number of results. Now we support that only JSON format of a response. We will support NDJSON, CSV. Also, we want to support chunked HTTP response, and we want to support header page and source parameters. This operation already available in Box. We can try to evaluate them in our sandbox. And that's all for me.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Looks
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
And how long it took Ivan to implement it?
About 4 days.
Okay, so that's just a motivation for the for the other engines. Spend extra 4 days and implement the API. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I see you guys implemented Page, or you have Page on your to-do list. I think
It's in to-do list, and I think it will be
Yes.
thrown away. Yeah, so
okay.
you can remove the page. We're not
Yeah.
going to support paging.
Great.
And we-
Great to see implementation forming. So I guess we'll have one from Steve
Yeah.
and one from you guys at Health
Yeah.
Summer.
Yeah, I
So-
could probably do a similar demo next week. I'm totally unprepared today, but I can do it next week.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I'm just thinking like who else might be
Yeah,
interested.
You have this guy on the front of you. His name is John.
His name is
Yeah,
John.
We're totally going to also implement this. We're just, as usual, a little bit, probably a couple of months behind, but we'll get there for sure. We definitely intend to implement this into Python server.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Yeah, for the other implementers out there, yeah, they probably just don't know because we haven't had a lot of folks from the other implementations on the call recently that have heard about this. So we probably want to make some noise around it and do some, I wouldn't say marketing exactly, but like just let more folks know that we are working on the API. There's something called the run operation. That is exciting. So generate some interest. Yeah, I think maybe folks are, I haven't spoken to anybody directly, but just thinking about the API work as a whole. But, you know, it might be good to make some noise on Zulip or elsewhere.
Yep, let's do it. And I know the motivation. I will show you what will motivate people to do that.
Yeah, because you're working on the like visual builder thing.
Yeah, first for the client, like who will be able to call the run operation, and then maybe we will integrate with a visual builder or rewrite visual builder in more agentic friendly tech stack. Yeah, so people can contribute. Yeah,
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I can share the progress on a specification for run. So me and Claude completely rewrote it, but we keep all the information, I hope. So yeah, I try to check that we not lose anything. So now it's much nicely structured. Thank you, Claude. So we see everything is grouped. The input parameters are grouped. All these references are working. So what we were discussed that we put a limitation that only one should be view reference or view resource present, and here is expressed as a comment. I don't know how to express it in an operation definition. So the format, I removed table and view. I think they are not relevant for that case. What's interesting? Yeah, the more clarification, they much more cleaner. And Steve, if you can read that, Claude didn't like truncate what you provide. I try to do that. So
Sure.
as well, yeah. As well, here's a much better example section, which is showing all possible examples like posting, getting, parameters. What's important, and the Claude like pointed to me that we should make error handling section. So, and we have it now. and with a description. I tried to find the right codes and write response codes as well for HTTP and write codes for operation outcome, but you're welcome to check it. So we're gonna fail if we don't know the parameter, and we will report it's not supported with a 400-bit request code. And we can report that the view definition is invalid. And it may look like this. So if the view definition is not found, we're just getting 404 code. If some required parameters are missing, that's probably a lot of stuff. I don't know which parameter could be missed, but probably if you're not providing view definition at all, so it may fail. So if there's an invalid format which is not supported by server, it should be covered by the not supported parameters. And yeah, this is example of not supported parameters, how we should respond to not supported parameters. And we should say it's not supported for the format, for the patient, for the, and that's just if something goes wrong on a resource side. So please review it. Yeah, I will work more. And then I did this similar work as well. I fixed the navigation, at least for now. You can see these operations in a build. I wasn't aware that the FHIR, this IG publisher, doesn't support nested folders. So yeah, everything should be on a top level. So I fixed. I don't know. Maybe we should rewrite the CSS for the official IG publisher because it looks much uglier. And then we can go to the export operation. And you may validate. So we say that we only support export on the type level with the post. So no get and no instance level as well. Yeah, it's grouped the same way. So I'm still keeping, Steve, this view as a nested parameter because we need a name. Yeah, probably we will need something else to identify in output what the name of the view. Then I renamed the client expert ID into client tracking ID because it looks like a little bit more self-descriptive. And you should, like, implementation, it's optional support of this parameter, but it may be useful. So then the rest is the same. And for the output parameters, I don't know, we should think about the cancellation. So potentially by bulk operation, you can cancel by sending delete on location, which will return it. But I can imagine that some implementation may not support this delete, and they can provide different URL for that. But if we don't need it, we can just remove it. Extra cancel URL. I put all times at the top. All of them are optional, and described the output and the new stuff, which was solved by Claude very nicely. So I asked it how to page results. He said, just make location star. That means that for one output, there could be multiple locations. And here's an example. So if you want to partition your response, you're just responding with the one output, with the one name and the multiple locations. I know, do we need extra flag that it was partitioned, but yeah, that looks quite nice. And this completely was invented by Claude, not by me. I just asked the question. Yeah, what else? There's some error handling, which is suggested by Claude and like verified by me. And here is the operation flow described, how it's all working, and the long grand example, how it may work, starting from the kickoff and ending up with the getting files from the URL provided and location. So that's it. It's waiting for you to review.
Well, it looks really good. Two things, if you can go back to run real quick.
Yep.
This probably applies to export, and only because I get confused what the right way of doing this is. So we have underscore format, and which is I see that it's now these nice shortened versions: JSON, NDJSON, CSV, and Parquet. And then there's the accept header, but the accept header is application/JSON, application/NDJSON, etc. Right?
Yeah, maybe types for all of this stuff, probably.
Right. So are we saying here definitively, I guess, where are the shortened versions allowed and where are the MIME types allowed? Or should we have an approach you can put any of them anywhere? and support all?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think in accept header we should use meme types,
Hmm.
and we probably can accept short versions. It's like in a FHIR, yeah. In a FHIR, when you say underscore format, you're using short versions, but for accept header, you're using the meme types. But I will clarify. Yeah, this is a good point.
And then the only other comment I had, I still get confused about what is allowed for get and what's allowed for post.
Forget, because you don't have a body, you could not provide resources to run against. You could not provide the view definition as a body. For the
Yeah,
get,
it's
yeah.
only the primitive types that are allowed in,
yeah.
in
So
get.
the get
Okay.
only working for the predefined views on the server.
Mhm.
And this is a good point as well. So I will add this to the documentation, to the specification. Yeah.
Looks great.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's not me. I was just driving.
It makes you look great.
Yeah.
Take advantage. Cool. This looks really good. I think so. Next steps. I would love some people outside the small group to take a look at it, because a lot of people haven't in the past couple of weeks. So I would suggest putting a post on Zulip. Maybe tag Graham, Josh, Dan.
Yep.
You know, folks who are, you know, familiar with this, Ryan, and just, yeah, the core group of people a little expanded. I think once you're at a spot where it makes sense, which I think you are. Like, it seems quite well developed at this point.
Yep.
Cool.
And this is the last demonstration that was done in 10 minutes. And I'm pretty sure, guys, we're gonna be out of industry very soon.
Out of a job.
So that's gonna be the standard client for the run operation and probably for the expert operation to test. So you can put it really 10 minutes. I'm not joking. So, and it's almost fully functional. Maybe I will spend like 1 more hour to make it work. But yeah, so this is a client where you can put the server location and it will call this run operation. I will probably add some extra stuff so you can put your security keys if you need. And yeah, and here's the parameters, and you can provide resources. You can even load. Yeah, it's load from here, but I will support like loading from AD JSON or something like this. And then you would be able to call the operation. For now, it's broken because nothing is listening on this port. And I will complete this and deploy to the Vercel and attach to our specification. So people, whenever we will have like implementations of the run operation, people will be able to run it against. And probably in the future, we will migrate the view definition builder here, so you don't have to use like just JSON representation. And I'm pretty sure it could be done quite quickly with the Cloud Code.
Very cool. Yeah, this is going to be useful.
And to be honest, I can sleep. And this is the smallest experiment I did with the Cloud Code. So let's see.
Yeah, maybe if we have some time, you could show us a little demo of how you work with it. Okay, so that's API updates. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, so definitely, yeah, I'd say make a post. I think it's time for more folks to take a look. All right, well, let's move on. John, you have there's a whole queue of stuff. Last week I listed some of them out. I have repeat directive, default type hints, row index, column type assertion, and clarification of the subset. Take them in whatever order you want, and we'll focus on it.
Okay. I think we should maybe start with the default type hints, because I think this is the most well defined for me, and we've actually kind of implemented this. And so this comes from the problem, I suppose, that you can have a view definition, you can run it on multiple different runners, but you can still get an output that you can't query over because those runners have taken different decisions in terms of the data types of the output. And we have a way of hinting like NC SQL types, but unless you require that, then view definitions can leave that out and there's no default. So I thought perhaps there should be a default. And of course, the default is not bulletproof because we have a diversity of runners that are not even really aligned to SQL, but it is still quite a strong hint. And I think that having a default in place will solve the problem in practical terms. But it does require, alignment from the implementations, basically. And we probably have to map these things to JSON and put a few extra tests in and that sort of thing, if we agree on the defaults. So let me just post the link in real quick, but I sort of encourage you. Oh, you already did. So
yeah. Maybe you can share the screen so for recording.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Yeah, we had a little bit of a discussion about this last week.
Few questions.
Yeah, and I am struggling to recall where that went.
First of all, for instant type, I think there is an ANSI SQL timestamp type which can be used for instant, and they compatible. I understand that datetime is not compatible, but the instant is.
Right. I mean, just higher level is, do we like the concept as a whole, or, which might need tweaks based on individual types, or do we think that just the conceptual idea of having in the spec, right, like a set of default type mappings, or is there potentially like a weaker version of this? I'm trying to remember what I said, and I think Gino was there too, right? Some of it, like, I wonder how useful it'll be given the diversity of how individual SQL implementations use types. So that was my kind of broad pushback, so to speak, because and I haven't like looked into this in detail and things like that, but like decimal, I think, is problematic across systems, because the problem is, as you well know, if all the SQL databases stuck with ISO or ANSI SQL, this wouldn't be a problem, but there just is a problem because of it, right? I wonder, I think you have two sets. I don't know why you have two sets. You'd have to choose a max size for var. Yeah, I'm wondering if a suggested model might actually be more work than a different approach for implementing.
Well, so it depends if you assume that implementers have added support for type hinting anyway. So if they've added support for type hinting, then they should have already done this. It's just a matter of what hints they're assuming.
Right.
If there is no hint, right?
Okay.
And so I guess is that required? And you pointed to like the fact that there are problems with some of these anyway. So for example, with decimal, if we use a native type for that, we're not going to get the same answer anyway. And things like dates as well, so dates, can have different precisions and different things like that. And I guess what we're trying to do is, by default, if you don't make a hint,
right,
we want something that can at least run error-free using the same SQL and preferably the same sort of values in the columns. So I guess we're trying to just have a sensible default that smooths that out. And I don't know whether we like what strength we put on the requirement. I mean, the type hints, I think, are optional at the moment. So, but yeah, I guess what I noticed in doing the effort between say Pathling and ABox is that we had to do casts on the view results in order to be able to run the same SQL. And that was the only gap that stopped us from being able to run the same view, same SQL. And if we had a default, or if both Pathling and ABox supported ANSI type hints and we specified them on all the columns, that would have solved the problem.
Right.
Now, I think both may work, and we may have a default and people can overwrite it with the hints. I think it will shine, and this problem will come when we will start working on the query resource, because it will become incompatible on different engines. But I still have a few questions about like decimal and the instant, because instant can be mapped to the timestamp. They are compatible, and to have at least one good date time type can help the people, so they can do, even for the dates, they can use lower boundary and upper boundary and say to instant and have like properly typed dates. We understand that for the daytime and other date types in FHIR, it's going to be ranges, but the people will be able to express it in native SQL types like timestamp.
Yeah, I guess
and we should
the
think
advantage
about
of having
yeah.
like a low FHIR default is that we can get consistency over a large range of runners. So for example, the reference implementation doesn't have a native instant type. It just has like JSON. So it's going to have to map. It's going to have to put that instant out to a string anyway. And of course, like AidBox or Pathlink can put an instant into an instant type. It's just a matter of like what's the right default for that if you want kind of the most consistency.
And maybe
by
the
default.
question from which point of view we are looking at it. Yes, because okay, in JSON you are outputting string, but this string could be compatible with the timestamp from ANSI SQL, and eventually to run the query, people will load this. Yes, and if it's compatible, so I would call it not string but ANSI type timestamp. Yeah,
what I said was that these are all strings, but actually they're FHIR, I think. So in other words, like ISO. So they're basically the string format that's defined in the FHIR spec. And yes, there is an issue with the size of varchars and all that sort of stuff, because in strict ANSI SQL, you have to specify a size for a varchar, but I think that our hint doesn't really go that far. So for example, you could say that this is like 255, and Pathlink would completely ignore it anyway because it has an unbounded sort of string size, and Postgres, it might truncate it and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's
Postgres use text for everything, so it's unlimited.
Or you interpret it as text instead of varchar, and all that stuff is fine. It's a hint, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but still, I still think like we should have like, it's not so you almost everything is mapped to the strings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's share the screens for the recording, I think.
Yeah, I can.
We'll understand what we're talking about.
Pull it up.
So
yeah,
almost everything is a char. Yeah, so is a string, just ints and booleans. But I really thinking about decimal and instant, which potentially could be native types on SQL.
Sorry, I thought I was recording. I thought I was sharing my screen, but there you go. Have a think about it anyway.
I think I'm warming up to it. I think my hesitation is, like, I understand there's a value, but there's also a risk of having a little bit of a black box layer. It's the consumer of it being presented with the mapping issue. Then, I mean, I guess it doesn't, like, I'm warming to it a little bit because they still will be presented with the mapping issue if let's say most of the things are going to be varchars. It's sort of like not breaking, like it's not just forcing a kind of breakage and then fix. It's sort of like
so I would say just you're breaking up a little bit.
We lost Arjun.
Yeah, I would contend that
wrong.
Arjun, your connection has a problems. Yeah.
No good.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you great.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds a little bit better. Sorry, we missed the last bit you said there.
What I was saying is that like it's in this model, the output being ingested into SQL database, for instance, it's safe, right? Like it's sort of safe by default, which is an advantage, right? Because you could encode most of these things into string or this set of types. And then you're presented with the conversion, like not problem, but you can convert it then into that layer, right? You can convert it. You can cast that varchar into
But
a
what's the
datetime.
problem? Again, so if the specification of SQL standard support timestamp and the definition of instant and FHIR is compatible with the timestamp, why we still want to keep it as a string?
Yeah, I'm not questioning any specific choice. I'm talking about the overall.
Yeah, but
You
to
may
be
be
honest,
totally
so
correct.
the problem is here in these two types, because we clearly understand that other types could not be translated to like more advanced stuff, but these two types, I see a lot of value if we will have at least one normal time representation for databases to query.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people will do casting all the time, and they still will do the casting, and casting may fail. Yeah, and if you will say that instant is safe, and you can in your view definition, you can, using FHIR pass and low boundary and upper boundary, you can translate your date time and date into two instance. That will work.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, if you drill down to it, none of them are actually safe. But what I would say to Arjun is on the mapping problem, I think what has happened is that all the implementations have mapped already. They've already mapped, and they've done it just in any way because it's not specified. And actually, if you go into the code of the view test runners of all the implementations, you will see a perfect example of this, because in order to pass the test, so not only have they mapped to whatever they think on the output, but also to pass the tests in the spec, you have to kind of be tolerant to just about anything in the test expectations, right? Because you again kind of have to map to whatever you have put out when there's no hint being specified to what the JavaScript reference implementation has mapped to, right? So it's not as if nobody's had to map to types. They just mapped. They've done independent mappings, and because there's no default specified, there's kind of no consistency there. That's what I would say. FHIR?
Yeah, just a couple of points about this. Yeah, I also agree that, because, almost everyone has something similar to this, it would be good to have some default types. So that part I totally agree. I guess then the next question is, then what's the goal of that default type? Because let's say, one default could be put everything in a string, right? And then, then the question is, are we achieving anything? Because then I think the goal is to reduce or maybe eliminate the castings that are needed when we are doing SQL. I think that's one of the main goals. And then I think we should try to come up with the stringent, like, the tightest basically types possible, such that, we reduce the amount of casting that is needed. So I think that should be the goal. And then we can get into the details of the proposed list that John has, and then maybe we can just refine it and then come up with something. Just one question that, the reason that, for some other types like date time and time, I guess people are suggesting that, we can't use the fancy SQL types. I think it's because of the accuracy that are in FHIR. Like, you can have a date time that is just a year. I assume that's the reason. So I see that. But I would say, I am guessing that in many of the implementations and then many of the use cases that I think about it downstream, still people would want to do they want to convert like a 2025, just a year, to a date, which is 1st of January, something like that. But that's a side discussion that we can have on the specific choices that we make. So I think let's focus if we agreed on the goal that we want to reduce the amount of casting, and then build up from there.
Yeah, I agree. We don't want people to have to cast every time, but I also think that a good default is not lossy. So we could have any default, but some things will actually lose information every time if we have that as a default potentially. And yeah, the reason that we can have, say, integers there and Booleans and binary data, those things are safe. But all the other things I think are potentially lossy just due to accuracy and precision and things like, for decimals, we have decisions to make about like the scale and all the rest that we represent in the particular implementation. So if we've got source data and we're passing that through, we're going to lose information with anything other than a string. And of course, yes, people are going to want to use a decimal as a decimal and an instant as an instant. I guess the question is, should that be the default? Yeah. And
John, what are the scenarios to using information for instance?
I think with instant, we stored that as an instant in the current Pathling implementation. In the Parquet on FHIR one that I want to move to, I think we're going to move to a string. I think the issue there again is precision, and also
what
assumed.
Can we look at the FHIR definition of instant and the ANSI SQL definition of instant, and can you point me exactly where they are not, where we can lose information when we will translating, like microseconds, or what's going to be lost?
Okay, I'll try. Actually, maybe would you mind pulling up the FHIR data types page? I think I've got a permissions problem, which is stopping me from sharing.
Okay, let me find it. So you mean FHIR instant definition?
Yeah, just FHIR data types.
Okay, where is the instant here? It is ISO blah blah blah.
I think this is just a precision thing, like you may lose milliseconds or microseconds, whatever, because it says that it should be up to seconds.
Where you see that it's up to seconds?
No, it's up to milliseconds. It looks like SS dot.
It may lose microseconds, but
no, the second sentence is the time shall specify at least to the second and shall include a time zone offset, right?
Yeah, and we can open ANSI SQL timestamp, timestamp with time zone here.
I mean, I think whether it's support, and it also says like sub-millisecond is optionally allowed, and whether or not it's representable in ANSI SQL is also separate from the practical consideration of what the limitations on actual implementations will be. Okay, so like if we made the default hint like timestamp, would that in practical terms result in consistency? So if I had used a timestamp in, say, if I had timestamp as the default, then I ran that view with Postgres, FHIR data pipes, and the reference implementation, and am I going to get something consistent? I guess that's the kind of practical consideration. Obviously, the reference implementation would have to map it to a string anyway, so probably it would use the FHIR string format. And then whether or not you get consistency in, like, say, database engines would probably be down to, what are the characteristics of how their timestamp type is implemented. Like, is it to the full extent that, you can possibly represent in FHIR, which looks like, even possibly sub-millisecond, or will it actually be kind of truncated and you'll get something that's less precise in one implementation and more precise in another. So it's very marginal on, I agree, on the instant. I think that's probably the most controversial of the data types, but
This
I
is
think
probably the
technically,
only data type we are we're discussing, because I agree the rest is a string. Yeah, so
I would say, so not being lossy, I mean, it's good, but as you said, like, I mean, on practical terms, let's say, let's just, pick an instant as an example, but, maybe we can have the same discussion for other data types. But if we figure that, yeah, it's like, it's good, it's going to be like lossy if we pick like, timestamp ANSI type for instance. So then let's put string, but everybody in their implementation, they actually model that as instant for practical reasons. Then maybe picking that as a default and accepting that, it might be not exactly precise, there might be some, error, but at least we have, in practice, every implementation is using this type. And then, so for the first goal, which is having less casting, that kind of, trump over the second goal. I'm not sure if it's like, I mean, I'm just debating whether, making sure that, it's lossless, the default proposed types should be like a requirement. I'm not sure about.
yeah, it's a good point. I guess, yeah, I was thinking about less casting to get to the point where these things are comparable rather than less casting in general. I guess in order to figure that out, we would, yeah, have to have a good read on, how the data is being queried, which could be tricky. So this is just a starting point. I'm not really married to the representation of instant. Like I said, we made the exact same decision for pathling. Whether that's the right thing for the view definition spec or not, I'm not sure, but have a think about it, and hopefully you kind of get where I'm coming from there. And yeah, if we talk about the other types, there's similar reasons there, like with decimals and all the rest. But, it's really, yeah, so there's this, I use the Parquet on FHIR thing as a starting point, but I think Parquet on FHIR has slightly different goals because it's very much more about integrity and preserving the original data. Like you even want to preserve things like the original precision of decimals, the original time zones that things were represented in the source data from that perspective, because if you want to reproduce it, if you want to round trip it, you want that. I guess it's slightly different here with the view definition, but yeah, I'm not really that married to the idea of having an instant as a string. Like I said, I think that's probably the most marginal of them.
I think, like, from querying point of view, this is very important, because finally people will do the casting. They will, if we will say this is a string, they will do the casting to timestamp or to something else, and all our queries which we're gonna distribute will do this casting. So you're just forcing people to put this casting everywhere into instant, and having at least one type which can be mapped to the dates, to time stuff, and express like years ago in a day or something like this would be good, even if there's some small gap that can bring some problems. But otherwise, people will do the casting, which may be even worse from point of view.
Yeah, you've got a point there, because then you can also, there's different ways to cast as well, and when you're doing types, and then you cast with a particular sort of precision and all that stuff as well. So yeah, okay, I think you've made a good argument, like in terms of having instant as like the sort of one type that we kind of
but I see in Parquet there is no support for timestamped or timestamp with the time zone, or is there some?
I think it's actually a hint. So so in Parquet, there are only a small amount of actual concrete types. And then there's kind of hints that go along with them that say how to interpret them.
So essentially it's represented as a string, not as a number, yeah, internally in Parquet, the timestamp. Is it string type?
I think it's like a number that's interpreted.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is number, okay.
Okay.
Well, we're almost at time, but good discussion. So next steps on this, should we, I mean, I think the case for instance to timestamps is also pretty good. I'm warming up to the idea in general. Do we want to, like, what's the next step here?
I would say let's try to come up the, to some consensus about the goals, because if the goal is to be lossless, then we may come up with different types and then if the goal is to, if reducing the number of casting is more important, then as Nikolai mentioned, I guess it's important to have an understanding of, so what are the queries that we are talking about? Have a sense of it, because each of us may be using the views for different reasons. And then based on that, we can say that, yeah, maybe for this type, we can, decimal, for example, can we use decimal or no, should we have to use like a string, for example?
The decimal is quite rare, but working with the time, it's gonna happen all around, yeah, so the people will work all the time. And I think we can recommend this trick to do like upper boundary and lower boundary and translate to instant.
I mean, I think like conceptually, I think we can think of this as guidance. That goes back to what John said around like what's the binding strength of this? What's the kind of guidance strength? Because if it's clear enough to implementers and users that this is guidance with a certain default set that is intended to be checked and then overridden as necessary with other, with more specific hints. That to me feels right. I don't know.
This is a bigger question. Yeah. For example, if people are doing FHIR datetime and they putting the hint to cast it to the SQL date, should we provide any recommendation about behavior like this? Because we understand that, for example, that you could not map the FHIR datetime to the date, because essentially FHIR datetime is a range, is an interval. And should we have something in the specification about how to work with the dates, like at least recommendations?
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah, I actually think so, because I mean, this conversation that we're having, people are going to need to essentially figure all that out on their own. And we could provide guidance around these specific type conversions. Yeah, I would support adding that.
Yeah, I think so. And I just put a link of where kind of we've got a pretty much an analog for this in the Parquet on FHIR spec, but we could have this as kind of like a should within the view definition spec. Like if you're going to do this, then this is how we think you should do it. But to go back to what Bashir said, I think the goal is not data integrity. I think it is ease of query, but within reason, because I think you could go to town on ease of query and have something that is sort of quite opinionated and quite distant from the sort of vanilla data that you might be expecting. So I think that's kind of a bit subjective there as to how far you go between integrity and ease of query. But I think you've convinced me on the instant, and maybe we've got a proposal here that is basically what we've got with instant as a timestamp type, and we kind of put that into a pull request along with some additional guidance. But I mean, it's not ironclad anyway. Like I take like a Python example, maybe we add a view definition to Panda's view runner. We would have to make a decision on how we map each of these things to, say, a Python data type. And so it wouldn't be exactly a SQL type, but I think the existence of default SQL mappings would help us in that regard to choose the best type that is most consistent with other view runners, even though we're not mapping exactly to ANSI SQL types.
Yeah, I think there's a pragmatic kind of happy medium approach, and it has escape hatches for people who need 100% data integrity. Yeah, I can kind of visualize it, I think, a little bit in this stuff, but it feels not. There's definitely advantages to having a a specific timestamp type, avoiding casting. Like I can see that being useful. So yeah, okay. Next steps here, I think a PR on the spec, or what do you think? Or I mean, I think we should probably socialize this one a little bit more as well around, but
as a recommendation and later make it a requirement. We can make a recommendation page how it can be mapped by default, and then collect the feedback, and if everybody agrees, so we can force it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. Like let's have other implementers speed it up a little bit. What do you guys think?
But we can publish already it as a recommendation.
Do folks like that?
Yeah, I thought it is always going to be a recommendation. So it's basically like a suggestion that, if you want to use types, SQL types, these are the suggestions.
No, I think the thought was that it was stronger initially. It's
I mean, it's just
overridable defaults, right?
It's just a default for the hints, and the hints are hints, right? So you can make a hint, and
I guess it's fair. Yeah.
I don't think it's possible for the hints to be binding, because not everything has a concrete like mapping to ANSI SQL types. So it's really just a hint of what you would like to get. And this is kind of just a default for the hints. So I don't think it's binding. It's just effectively like what type hint is assumed if there is none. I mean, the alternative is that we require hints, but I don't think we want that, right? Because then every view definition has to just be littered with hints on every column. It'd be nicer, I think, that if there's no hint, it just assumes that there is a hint, like of, say, a string, right? And of course, if you put another hint in, then you can override that. And, even if there are hints, you could have another level of overriding at the view runner that says, I don't care what the hints are, I'm just going to use my types that I want. And that's effectively like a cast anyway. But I guess this is really just talking about what's the intention if there is an absence of a hint, I guess. Because at the moment, we've basically done that already in the implementations, but in an arbitrary way, because there is no guidance.
All right. Yeah, I'm coming around. All right. So I know we're over time. So next steps, let's socialize this a bit more, maybe get some of the other folks similar to Nikolai to get eyes on it, see if they can understand it as well. And then I would say probably the artifact is a spec edition, maybe an individual page. I don't know where it might live, but how does that sound to folks?
Yeah, I think I can make this more concrete in a pull request. I honestly think it's just a table in the type hint section, along with some additional sort of words. So I can make it more concrete in a PR and sort of reflect what we've talked about into the Zulip chat, and we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me. All right. Thanks, everybody. Time to work on my stuff, but yeah, good chatting, everybody, and I'll see you next week.
See ya.
Yes.